You're listening to Oilersnation Radio, presented by the Nation Network. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Oilersnation Radio, episode 144. I am Bagged Milk. I'm here with Tyler Remchuk, Rick, and Nation Dan. We are going to break down the week that was for the Edmonton Oilers, as well as the NHL. We've got a new segment that we're bringing in this week, so we'll get to that in a minute. But first, we start off, as always, shouting out our friends at Sherwood Ford on Twitter at Sherwood Ford and on Instagram at Sherwood Ford _the Giant. I'm looking outside. I can see my parking space from here, and I still don't see a Bronco out there. I was hoping that by the time we started recording, there'd be a brand new Bronco out there, but maybe next week. Maybe next week. I know you got them, Sherwood Ford. I saw them on your Instagram. Just DM Sherwood Ford with your personal address, and then that way they know for sure. Oh, they have my address. They definitely have my address.
We can go pick them up too. Like, let's not put this all on them. They don't have to deliver them to us. That's fair. We can all get ourselves down there. You know what? We can take care of that part. Just provide them, and we'll find our way to the Tyler. Tyler can come all the way from St. Albert, pick us all up on the way, and then just leave his ride there because he's got a new Ford Bronco. I also realized that maybe my ask was too aggressive. 4 different colors, maybe but they could be 4 of the same color, Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we can switch up the decals. It doesn't have to be 4 different colors. Either way, the convoy around the Henday would look just as good no matter what. So Sherwood Ford, follow them on social media at Sherwood Ford on Twitter, at Sherwood Ford _the Giant on Instagram. Service, parts, whatever you need for your whip. Head on out to Sherwood Park. They got you covered. Tyler, what is our Sherwood Ford Giant question of the week, please? Our Sherwood Ford Giant question of the week is one I sent out to the masses. I put it out on our Instagram, on our Twitter, and our boy Waz put it out on TikTok. What is your biggest question when it comes to the Oilers offseason right now? What is the one thing that you desperately want an answer to? That is this week's Sherwood Ford Giant question. And once we give our answers, we're going to take questions from the audience, and then we're going to answer those as well. We've got so much knowledge to give, and I feel like we would be remiss to not just bless you all with the things in our heads, All right, Dan, I'm looking at you first. You're up on my screen. What is your biggest off-season question for the Edmonton Oilers? For me, I have a running theme now, and for me, it's going to be goaltending and what our goaltending situation is going to look like next year. I'm not going to sit here and question Mike Smith, but the reality of time is at some point he's not going to be a Vezina caliber goalie. And I don't think Mikko Koskinen is the answer to back him up anymore. So I would like to know what the Oilers are going to do with both Mikko Koskinen or Mike Smith. And also if there's going to be a new goalie in our mixed other than Alex Stalock. So yeah, the goaltending is my big question mark. I also think it's going to be interesting too, because Alex Stalock is still around as well. It's not like he's not going to be battling for a job. Who knows how that turns out, but he's cheap. He's got 1 year left on his deal. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think that's right. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how he factors into the mix as well. Tyler, your biggest off-season question. Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with Dan on this one. I just look at the goaltending, and when you look at, let's take a bigger picture look at it to start. Like with the blue line, we know a lot of the pieces that are coming back. We're pretty sure Adam Larsson's getting re-signed. You got Darnell Nurse, you got Bear, you got Bouchard. You might end up still having Jones. Like however that shakes out, the blue line's going to look largely the same. And even if it is an issue next season, I don't think it'll be as big or a big enough issue to sink them right out of the gate, right? And same thing with the offense. If they were to return the same top 6, top 9 that they did last season, it's probably good enough to get them into a playoff spot. It just wouldn't be a significant upgrade, but still, it wouldn't sink them. On the goaltending, if they get that wrong, and if whatever chance Ken Holland takes is wrong, then that might sink them out of the gates here. And it might become a legitimate issue that could potentially ruin their season if we're taking a pessimistic look at things. So that's the one big question I have is what's going to happen with the goaltending. And the reason it's an interesting question on top of that is there's so many different ways Ken Holland could go. On the trade market, you have a guy like Merzlikins, you have a guy like Darcy Kemper who could potentially get moved. There's a situation in Dallas where they have 3 goalies right now, and 2 of them in Ottinger and Hudobin, they might have to expose one of them to Seattle. So there's a lot of ways, like a team like Dallas might have to do some interesting stuff.
There's so many goalies on the market, whether it's trade or free agency, that are varying ages and skill levels and cap hits, that there's so many different ways Holland could go. For me, the biggest question is what's going to happen with the goaltending?
The more I think, we're going to talk about expansion a little bit, but Tyler, since we're talking about goaltending, do the Oilers have to protect Koskinen because he's got the limited no move?
No.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, well, they can choose whatever they want with him because it's a limited no trade as well, I believe. I don't think it's a full no move. I'm double checking Puckpedia right now, but I believe that's the case.
While Tyler's looking that up, it is a no trade.
Yeah, modified no trade, 15 team list.
All right, Rick, biggest question for the offseason.
How are they going to solidify their top six? We had a little bit of a question mark in Yamamoto's season. Are we confident he's going to bounce back into a guy who can produce on that second line? How are they going to deal with the Nuge? What else are they going to add down that left side? We know we have two of the best scorers in the world. I think Puljujärvi was a step in the right direction, so no reason to think that won't continue forward. But how are they going to solidify that top six? How are they going to solidify the area around Connor and Leon? They can't do all the heavy lifting for us. You look around at the teams right now and it's still left in the playoffs. They have more than just two scorers. I think our defense is fine, and goaltending, you guys are right. But if I went with goaltending, it'd be kind of boring to listen to. So we need to find a way to solidify that top six. We have the two most important pieces there already. I think we have two more very good pieces in Puljujärvi, and I do believe Yamamoto bounces back. But the left side is question mark right now. If Nuge is back, I'm happy. But who's that sixth player we're going to bring in? So that top six is what has me worried right now.
I was also going to say the top six, like what's going to happen in the top six. First, if Nuge comes back, okay, that's great. I'd be happy, obviously, president and CEO of the fan club. That would be one fewer top six winger they need. I think the idea of getting two top six left wingers is unrealistic, personally, in one offseason. But we'll see how it goes. We're going to talk about Nugent Hopkins a little bit more. I was actually going to be my biggest question, but again, I don't want this to be boring. So I'll change it up and go the right side on the defense. I'm assuming Tyson Barrie is gone, that he's leaving for greener pastures and bigger bank accounts. Does anybody disagree?
I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I think Ken Holland's been actually pretty blunt with his comments about Evan Bouchard as well this past season, kind of saying like he's done at the American League level. He's coming up. And when you look at that, unless they plan on moving a piece on the right side, I just can't see them bringing back Tyson Barrie. And I think there will be a team out there who's trying to push themselves into that contender status, who will look at a guy who just led the NHL in points by a defenseman and go, yeah, I'd give that guy 5x5 or 5x6 or whatever it ends up being. I think Barry's gone.
So my question then is, will the Oilers be comfortable bringing back a right side of their defense that has so little experience overall? Larson, he's played 600 plus games. Got it. Bouchard, he's just entering his NHL career. He's just getting started. He's just scratching the surface, if you will. Bear is also, despite playing 2 years now, he's also a young guy. If you look at the teams that are in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, I don't see that little experience on their blue line. So just to make things different, I guess my biggest question is, are we going to come back with more or less the same defense? Obviously, Klefbom would be a huge add if he is able to return, but we don't know. How's the defense going to look at the start of 2021, 2022? How much change is there going to be? Are we comfortable going with some younger players and expecting them to contribute? Or is Ken Holland going to try and fish for some more experience there? Does he think he needs it? Gregor wrote about that on Oilersnation.com this past week. I don't know. Maybe. I don't have an answer. That's why it's a question. Is anybody concerned about experience on defense as it stands right now, or do you think we're okay?
I'm not worried about experience by like games played. I think we might need to add, obviously, at least one more to the left side, depending on what Klefbom does. And I think our right side comes back the way it is right now, unless they go for Dougie, in which case I think you could see them trying to flip Bear afterwards. But I don't see Yeah, and I don't see any other guy on the UFA list, and I don't really see a big enough need to alter our right side, if not for just that one type of player.
I think it is a question mark though, right? Because man, wouldn't it be great if it was June 18th right now and we knew what the fuck was going on with Oscar Klefbom? Is he going to play? Is he not? Because
do you think he keeps a bit of a question mark on it? So it's going to help us to not protect him and give more of a reason for Seattle to go, you know what? Maybe we won't touch this guy. And this is some sort of behind the scenes, buddy type of situation where he's not going to give the information. It allows us to hold somebody else and keep Seattle from taking them. And we're going to end up prosperous at the end of it.
Tyler, you're shaking your head here.
I think
that too hopeful.
I think it's a little bit too hopeful. I think if the Oilers thought he was coming back, they would just protect him, and that would kind of be the end of it. If there was any sort of buddy stuff, it's probably with the Larson extension, maybe not getting done before the expansion draft, and when Seattle's in their sort of negotiating window with him, Larson might just play along and be like, oh yeah, maybe, I don't know, I haven't signed anything, blah blah blah. But I think for Klefbom, they legitimately don't know what's going to happen still. And that's something I honestly think Ken Holland probably needs a firm answer from Klefbom and the doctors on within the next 4 weeks here. And I would expect we're going to hear some sort of news, because you can't go into a big offseason like this and be sitting there going, well, we might have a guy who would be our second best defenseman in the lineup for opening night, or we might not. And we don't know about that $4.1 million cap hit. Those are question marks you can't have going into an offseason where you're trying to take your team from playoff to cup contender.
Couldn't you have talked to him and said, hey, how are you feeling right now? Talk to the doctor.
Well, he spent a lot of time in Edmonton, so I think they might have a potential idea. I think they might know a vague percentage.
So hey, are you on track? Yes, he's on track. What do you think the odds are going forward that he's going to be 100? And then Oscar, if you're 100, are you playing? Where do you think your line is? These are all conversations I think they would have had by now, and it'll give them a lot more information on the future than what we have.
I think that's right.
I was just going to say,
if you keep talking like that, then you can be like, hey, if we just don't say anything, there's going to be too many questions out there, and other teams are going to go whatever, and they have the dialogue on the inside.
I truly believe in my heart of hearts that Oilers management knows the situation with Klefbom and where the timeline is. They're just not going to let us know, because it's just not information that we need to have out there, and that they need to have out there with Seattle sniffing around. And I think Rick's right to a certain extent, but I also agree with Tyler that the minute that we see that expansion list, we know exactly where Klefbom's timeline is at. It's either he's coming back or he's probably never going to play hockey again. That's where I'm at in that sensibility. And I just really do believe, and maybe I'm naive in thinking this, and I'd love to hear from an actual player as to whether it is true or not, but the organization, I would hope, checks in on these guys every once in a while, especially if they've got a major question mark like they do with Klefbom.
Well, he spent a significant amount of time in Edmonton. He did his post little press conference there. So the Oilers are obviously keeping tabs on this thing. I don't even think Oscar Klefbom knows right now if he's going to play it all next season. I think there's still a long ways to go with that stuff. And the Oilers will find out eventually. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where a week before training camp, we're sitting there being I wonder if Klefbom's reporting in 7 days. Hey, is he coming back? Where is he? They'll know soon.
Can you imagine? That'd be fucking wild.
It's the activity.
Yeah, we're not going that far, I don't think. But
can you imagine if we did, though? If the Oilers were we don't know. He won't tell us.
That's extremely Steve Tambellini kind of stuff, where you just sit back and you have no idea, no indication from the organization. They haven't made a transaction to bring in a lefty, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, Oscar Klefbom done for the season.
We'd talk about that one particular thing for a whole 60 minutes, no problem.
Yeah, we'd have an emergency podcast.
So far what we've got here for our giant question is the goaltending is one question. Can we get the top six done is another. And mine is the same defense coming back more or less? If you have a question that is not one of those three, although I think we pretty much covered it, really.
I was just going to say,
there's at least one good one out there too.
If you have a question that you want to know, hit us up, ON Radio Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. We are going to include you guys in the podcast a little bit more. We'll get to that in a second. I want to know, what is your biggest offseason question for the Edmonton Oilers? Hit us up. Next, I want to thank our friends at Skip the Dishes for making sure that I stay fed and making sure that I am nourished. I'm not a great cook, I admit it, but I do like to eat. So I like to go and choose from thousands of restaurants from around the city, different cuisines, different flavors, different areas even. Skipthedishes.ca, whatever you want, get something to eat this weekend, tip your driver, maybe try something new. I encourage it. I encourage you to expand your horizons. We're talking expansion draft, so we might as well just get into it a little bit more. I want to read you guys this tweet from Pierre LeBrun. Hearing from team execs around the NHL that there's still some sticker shock to what Kraken GM Ron Francis wants in return for side deals for teams with protection issues who may want some certainty. TikTok, the poker game is on. We're 1 month away. So when Vegas came in a few years back, they made 15 trades in expansion based on what I could find on from Sinbin Vegas. So 15.
They made a trade. They made a trade with half the league.
I was just going to ask that off the top of your head.
Like,
do you know how many teams that was?
Probably
like there were
three trades.
There were multiple trades with same teams.
Yeah.
So 15 total trades were made. That's from Sinbin Vegas, had the breakdown on that. You can check that out there if you want. Do you guys think that GMs have learned anything from what happened in Vegas, or with Vegas, I should say? Or do you think we're going to still see the same number of weird transactions to try and protect certain players, leave other guys alone, leave head scratchers available, guys that you may not have thought were going to get protected? What do you guys think is going to happen? Are we going to beat, I guess my question is, are we going to beat 15 trades for Seattle, or did these guys learn something? Did the hockey men learn something?
I think where they've learned their lesson, and Frank Saravalli's talked about this a little bit, is they won't trade with Seattle as much. They'll trade with other teams more. Like, I think you'll see a few more, like a team has 2 goalies, they're going to lose one of them, but then they'll go to a team who maybe has an extra defenseman and like pull off a trade there where it's like, all right, you take our goalie because you need a goalie. We'll take your defenseman. The values might not even line up here, but now we're both losing like a shitty depth forward instead of one of these more key pieces. And I think we'll see a bit more of that. I even think the Oilers are in a great spot to do that. I think teams will be very, very hesitant to load up the Seattle Kraken again. I think that'll make them nervous. And I do think there'll actually be a lot of teams and GMs who just kind of are stubborn about it. And they'll sit there, cross their arms and go, take your player. We don't give a shit. And I think at that point, it'll be interesting to see how Ron Francis kind of responds, because if you're Ron Francis and let's say your pro scouts, everything you see, you're talking Edmonton, they don't like Caleb Jones for whatever reason. I'm just using a hypothetical here, by the way, but they go, you know what? He's not going to be in our top 6 with everyone else we have plucked out. We really don't want Caleb Jones. We would prefer if the Oilers gave us a 3rd round pick and said, take James or Zach Cassian or whoever it is, right? So if you're Ron Francis, do you eventually start softening your asking price a little bit? Are there some bad contracts around the league that you look at and go, might be more of a player there than maybe the team that currently has him recognizes? And if they're going to give us a 2nd round pick, we'd like to do it. But the team with the player is like, nope, we're not getting whatever by you. We're not getting screwed. You're taking whoever you want off our roster. I think there's going to be some interesting mind games being played here.
I will, after the show is over, I'm going to go look and see what the names of GMs were back then as opposed to now. And I'm going to guess that it's about 23 of them still have jobs with either their organization or another organization. So for me, hockey GMs is a circle, and there's very rare times that we see where a GM learns their lesson that is doing the thing. And so I believe that these GMs still think that they know more than the other GM on the other end of the table in Ron Francis. And so for me, I don't think they have learned from their mistakes. The one thing I do think that they have taken away from it is the prep work ahead of time. Tyler kind of alluded to it, that more teams I think are set up to make transactions with other squads and are able to make transactions themselves than they were with the Vegas expansion. And I don't know if that's necessarily just because they were planning for the Seattle expansion, or if it was just a factor of knowing that there was an expansion coming. And so they started to kind of gear their contracts and build their team in that sense. But yeah, for me, I do believe that there is still going to be a Florida GM mistake debacle where Seattle is going to look like geniuses for the transactions that they make with them. But on the whole, I don't think that the Seattle Kraken are going to get much better like Vegas did. I think more teams will get better based off of the fact that they're able to victimize teams that are up tight against the expansion protection numbers.
Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see Vegas, I don't see Seattle getting the same quality that Vegas got. I think there'll be a little more hesitancy in making deals. It might make Francis ease up on his asking price then, as you push closer to the deadline. Like he's like, this is what Vegas got, and we're like, well, that's what Vegas got, so we're not doing that. And then as you get close to the deadline, maybe it starts to soften Francis's side of things. But you're always going to see. You'd rather go down with the bat. You'd rather go down swinging than the bat on your shoulders, right? So some trades, like I don't remember Vegas winning more than 2 or 3 massive deals, and then a couple, just wins, and probably some losses out there that we don't remember as well, right? Like I think we remember it being a little bit better than it actually was. Did they win when they got James Neal there? Like there's so many players there I have question marks about, but the ones that are still there, and they've done a fantastic job. Obviously, they've been a very good team pretty much from the drop of the puck. So it is what it is. I don't think Seattle will be as good as what Vegas is, though. I think the GMs will be a little more scared to make that deal.
Well, and I think you make a good point.
Where I was looking through some of these trades, and I think what Vegas did a really good job of, and I wonder if Seattle will match, is that they got a shit ton of draft picks is what part of their return. And they flipped those for other shit, be it as part of a package or on its own. So I wonder how many draft picks Seattle is going to be able to collect, because I think, and I'm just talking out loud here. Like if you're going to trade a pick, would this year not be the one to move because of just how weird everything has been? Some guys have played more games than others. Mm-hmm. Has the scouting been as active? Like they haven't been as much in-person scouting, I would imagine. A lot more video work. Is this the year to move more draft picks? So that's what I'm more curious about.
Or is this the year where you could find a diamond in the rough? Where if you think, right, like the randomness of the draft. So. Yeah, well, fucking Buffalo has like 8 people in their whole scouting department, so I don't know what they're thinking with that. Just quickly on the Vegas topic, Derek Englund, who was one of the first players selected by the Golden Knights in the expansion draft, he was on the DFO rundown earlier this week. And he told a story about their mindset in that season and how at the beginning of things, all the veteran guys on the team kind of talked and were like, we're going to play hard for each other. And at the deadline, we're going to get moved to contenders because this team's going to get draft picks. And he's talked about how in the first few months of the season, they were kind of winning and everyone was having so much fun there. And then they went out and they swept on one road trip, Tampa, Washington, and Pittsburgh. And he said after that, he got together with some of the veteran guys, and I'm paraphrasing his story here, but they got together and they were like, if we keep winning, they won't trade us. Like if we keep this going and like we control our fate, if we want to stay in Vegas, and they all did, they were like, all we have to do is keep winning hockey games and they'd be stupid to trade us to contenders. And he talked about how one of the motivating factors in that run was all of them sitting there and like deciding we don't want to get traded, so we better keep fucking playing good. It was funny. It was a great interview.
Well, I do wonder how much like Vegas right now is in the Final Four again. They don't have to do expansion also. I wonder if there's any kind of like, I'm just thinking about me personally, and I'm a small man. I'll admit that right here and now to all of you. I wonder if there's any of it that just like they look at how successful Vegas has been. And I know they've after the expansion draft, they've collected a bunch of pieces like the Petrangelos, all that shit. I get it. But I wonder if there's any part of some of these GMs that look at the Vegas Knights and be like, that fucking team is better than mine right now. It just pisses me off. I'm not going to do this bullshit with Seattle. And they just kind of go the route with that Tyler said, where it's just like, we're going to lose a guy, but why should I also give you a pick for whatever? I would rather trade with the Bruins or the Hurricanes or something else like that to try and make something work. I have no interest in just introducing another really solid NHL team. And for the Oilers, that'll be in our division,
Yeah.
I wonder if there's that like saltiness in there, because if it was me, I would be salty about how good Vegas is. I am salty about it.
And the crazy thing to me too is that Vegas has gone on the record a few times as saying like this wasn't the plan. Their plan was to be competing for a cup within 5 years. Like 5 years down the road, Bill Foley was going to be 80 years old, their owner, and was going to be that was going to be when they were going to be pushing for the cup. And then everything just changed. And I think you're going to probably see that with Seattle a little bit too, just because when you put these players together and they've all been exposed and they've all been told by their team that they're not the top 8 or 9 players on their team, they can come out and they can perform, and they're going to shock some people with their performances. We saw it with Marchessault. We're seeing it with Tuck. We're seeing it with a guy like Mark Stone, who's come in, as a 6th round pick from the Ottawa Senators. So it's just natural that stuff is going to happen. I just don't think that they're going to have the same level of success that Vegas had, and I don't think it'll ever happen again to that level. It was a special moment to be a part of, but yeah, now there's just no way that other teams are going to let that kind of stuff fly.
With expansion, before we wrap up expansion, I just want to go around the horn. We got about a month and change until the expansion draft. I want our way too early predictions on who the Edmonton Oilers will lose. So I'll write these down. I'll say, these are our predictions. We'll tweet them out. This will be our record and see how close we get. Dan, you are the big guy on my screen right now.
Just the big guy in general.
And in my heart, buddy. And I want to know, who's your way too early prediction that the Oilers are going to lose in expansion?
Well, I don't want to just go boring, so I won't say Caleb Jones. I'm going to say Mikko Koskinen. And I'm saying that because I think that there will be a transaction, kind of like what Tyler said, where it's just Vegas doesn't really like it. Nothing that Edmonton is exposing is really getting them excited. So they'll reach out to us, get a draft pick in exchange for considerations, and then take Mikko Koskinen off our hands.
That is bold. I dare to dream, Dan. You're a dreamer, and I respect it. Tyler, you're next up on my screen. Your way too early prediction on who the Oilers lose in expansion.
I'm going to say Tyler Benson will be the player the Oilers lose in expansion. And I was kind of reading around a little bit and tinkering with the expansion lists a little. And there's actually a handful of really good young left-handed defensemen that Seattle can get their hands on. Like Jake Bean is a guy out in Carolina that he very well could shake loose, and that's a lefty who they would love. And you look in Chicago, they might have to give up a somewhat decent D-man as well, someone like Nikita Zadorov. And you just kind of go through all these teams. Colorado's another one. They might give up Ryan Graves, and there are so many defensemen around the NHL that could be shaking loose in this expansion draft. And I just wonder if they might sit there and maybe I'm doubting myself a little now saying Benson, because they might sit there and go you can never have enough good young defensemen and it's good trade bait to have. But I think at some point you can't just pick 14 defensemen and be the best available player on every team was a defenseman. And they might look at Benson, a guy who's coming off a great season in the American Hockey League. He'd be on a relatively cheap deal as well because he's still so young. They might look at that and just go, there's a guy with some upside who we think is going to be an NHLer for a long time, and we'll take that guy in our forward group.
Rick, who are you thinking?
Well, I like that because I'm going to use all those reasons as to why they kind of go off the board here. And I actually saw this I was flipping around on the internet yesterday, and Stuart Skinner. So I think if you are convinced that you've got enough defensemen and you're at a point where you're looking at, we might have to take a chance on the type of player, and you're looking at, it's going to be Benson, you're going to sit there and go, where's our better chance in winning this pick? And I think that they may think that Stuart Skinner, and the Oilers, obviously, as far as I understand, have ultimately given up on him for some odd reason.
They have Konovalov coming over, right?
Well, yeah, Konovalov coming over, and then I still anticipate they pick up a quote-unquote number one this year. Yeah. So it's really going to push that middle person out a bit. They're not going to really need them. I think it'd make the Oilers really happy to lose a type of player they don't see going down in the long run. So yeah, I think it comes down to somebody off the board a bit, and I can see them going after the goaltender.
I just think Edmonton might protect him, right? So the goalies they have to choose from are Koskinen, Stalock, Dylan Wells, Stuart Skinner, and Mike Smith. Smith's a pending UFA. You could realistically not protect him. You're not protecting Koskinen, obviously. So if it came down to Stalock or Skinner, I think the Oilers might choose Skinner. But again, maybe that's a situation where, you're duping yourself into losing two guys. And we just talked about how that's a dangerous game to play. But what if Seattle comes and is like, if you give us the young guy in Skinner, we'll take the old Koskinen off your hands for a year as well. Like, is that something? I don't know. I have a hard time thinking though they leave Skinner unprotected.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't consider the goaltender, but they may actually go and keep. They may go and keep a guy like Stalock just in case the goaltending UFA season doesn't go exactly the way they want. But they still have that guy sitting there. That's probably a better a little more of a better safety net than Skinner.
I guess I'll just give the boring answer then, just to wrap it up. I think it's going to be Caleb Jones. I was surprised that he was left to me at the last pick, but I would be surprised if it's not Caleb Jones that they take. However, because that's boring, my real answer that I wish would happen would be Uncle Ken makes a little bit of a side deal, and all of a sudden Seattle has a marketable face with $1 million smile on the side of their building.
Those teeth.
He has been to Stanley Cup finals. He's scored 20 goals 9 times in his career. He's a veteran that this team needs. James Neal is the guy. I don't think it'll happen, but that's my hope. That's my pie in the sky dream and wish. I don't know what kind of side deal Uncle Ken would have to make to have that happen, but I'm a dreamer, and that's what I hope is going to happen. So Dan says Koskinen, Rick says Skinner, Tyler has Benson, I have Jones. Who's your pick, fair listener? Hit us up, ON Radio Podcast. I want to know who you think, your way too early prediction for who the Oilers are going to lose in expansion. I don't think they're going to get as lucky as they did when Vegas picked up old Griffin Reinhart, who's now playing in China or something, I think I saw last. But the Oilers are going to lose a player. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's crazy. Again, everybody also needs to just take a moment here and thank Todd McClellan for not playing Evan Bouchard years ago when Peter Chiarelli wanted him to, making Dad exempt from this summer's expansion draft. So thank you, Todd McClellan. Not enough people remember it, but I do. And I'm going to keep thanking you for it because Evan Bouchard is going to be a beauty, despite what Jay said on this podcast about a year and change ago now.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I said a year ago, and then I was like, wait a minute, that was way longer than a year. Well, I've been stuck in my house for a fucking year and a half now. Okay. Before we move on, I want to give some love to our friends at Cornerstone Insurance. They all have all the products you need. Maybe you've gone to Sherwood Ford. We've talked about them earlier. You got a new Bronco. Now you need some insurance on that whip. You head on over to Cornerstone Insurance and make it happen. They have got all of the products you need, be it your person, your car, your house, your business, whatever you need. On the left-hand side of the screen, there's also a link for citizens of the nation. Get yourself a little discount. Cornerstone Insurance has been a family and employee-owned business in Edmonton for 90 years and over 4 generations. They are fine people with fine insurance prices, and they want to help you. CornerstoneINS.ca. CornerstoneINS.ca. We're moving along here a little bit, boys. I'm going to give an old segment from North by NorthGretz. If you've been around the nation a long time, you'll know that podcast I did a long time ago. We're going to bring back a segment here right away from that one. But first, I got to talk about my boy, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This week's 31 thoughts from Elliot Friedman. I just realized that he's now going to have to do 32 thoughts next year. Mm-hmm. That guy, I would love to get Friedman just having a beer with the guy, you know what I mean? And just, if you could do it again, would you rather do 5 thoughts or something like that instead of having to write this 5,000 word opus every week?
I do though sometimes because I love that blog. It's fantastic. It's a water hose or a fire hose of hockey information. But I sometimes you can tell when he was probably at 29 for the week, because there'll be one that's randomly broken up into 2. And you're like, that's probably one thought, Elliot, but he goes through and slice them up, slice them and dice them, which I love that.
I get it too, because a couple of weeks ago in the nation, I decided I had this idea that I was going to do 56 thoughts after a 56 game season. And by the time I got to about 12 or 13, I'm like, oh, this was the worst idea I've ever had. I knocked it out. But I'll tell you that there was a couple of those thoughts that were, not a whole lot. So from 31 thoughts this past week, the point was simple. Tyler tweeted it too. It just says Oilers and Nugent-Hopkins are grinding towards common ground.
We out here grinding.
Ponies on in the background. We grinding, fam. Now, Gregor also had that both sides are talking back and forth. on Oilers Nation in one of his articles earlier this week. Friedman says it. Are we getting this done? Does this just it just seems to me at a point where you're just putting in so much work to not have it get done? Or am I just being hopeful?
It would be very disappointing at this point if it doesn't get done, in my opinion. Like, you're right. We've heard that the conversations have been happening since September. And to go 8 months of trying to find middle ground. And clearly this is two sides that want to find middle ground. You don't put in this much work if you're wishy-washy on a player. You only work this hard to bring a guy back if you legitimately love having him in your organization. And that's all we've heard as well, is that the Oilers love Nuge, his teammates love him, and Nuge loves Edmonton and his teammates. So I think they need to find common ground. It's probably just a matter of one side, swallowing their pride maybe a little bit. And I don't know which side that'll end up being, but one of these two sides finally just going, you know what, we'll give in. And whether it's the Oilers getting it to be a 5-year deal instead of a 6-year deal, or Nugent Hopkins saying, you know what, you threw in the 6th year, I'll drop my AAV to closer to 5.5 million or whatever it needs to be. And I really do think they'll find a way to get this thing done. That's the way I feel like it's trending in my heart.
I just feel like they're putting so much work in it. Like Tyler said, it'd be really disappointing if it doesn't happen and things break. Dan, you said a couple of weeks ago you think Nuge is gone or played his last game in Edmonton. Does this kind of stuff keep you in that train of thought, or are you kind of being like, wow, they're really working hard on this?
I'm still in my heart of hearts, I want him back, but I just try to keep myself kind of level and prepared for the worst. And then,
that's life as a Oilers fan in a nutshell, isn't it?
Well, there you go. And then when things go well for us, then you can be happy. But yeah, for me, it's still, I just kind of look at those little tidbits as, yeah, they're talking, but until there's a deal signed, I'm not going to get too excited for it, and just keep my expectations low and my hopes high.
Rick, you've maintained the entire time Nuge comes back. Still feel that way?
Yeah, this stuff happens all the time. I know it's a little bit different for us because it's very polarized here in this city, and we really haven't had to go through this type of a situation recently. And for everybody our age, this is the type of contract we tend to lose players, right? Yep. This would have been a Dougie Weight contract. This would have been, I guess, Cujo would have been around this age, I think, this time in his career.
Smitty at the airport.
Yeah, so exactly. I get it. The PTSD kicks in. I just don't see that happening here. I just see this getting done. And it's not out in the public, right? Therefore, we speculate back and forth. People bring up the bad, the good, the whatever. And I bet you things are a lot different if you got into the boardroom and see where they're actually at in terms of ironing out all the details.
I'd love to know how those Connor and Leon conversations went to in that week after, where Ken Holland said he was going to consult his leadership group, because he probably asked. I'd love to know. I got a feeling I'm going to be buying some jerseys here soon, gentlemen, and I'm going to be looking for someone that will give me a deal. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Watch them kick in those royal blues. I heard rumors about too, just to give you one more jersey to buy.
I'd be fine with that. I'm trying to think of what I'll do. So I've committed to buying the jerseys if he signs an extension. I'll do it. But should I split it up into a chunk? Because if the royal blue comes back, that's the one I want. Yeah. That's the one I want. And then the white one after that would probably be next up on my list, and then from thereafter. But I will get it done. I'm a man of my word. I guess this is just former Oiler talk, friend of the nation. Tom Gazolla had some news that made its way around the old internet machine this week. He was on Two Guys and a Goalie. They were doing their Keep It or Clip It segment about Taylor Hall signing in Boston. Personally, I'd be surprised if Boston lets him go. I honestly think that he fit well there. He performed well there. It just seems like he's got a nice spot in Boston. I think it would be a good fit for Tay to stay there. But
I was just going to say the only issue for that, though, is they do have to sign David Krejci, and if they want to sign Tuukka Rask, then money does become a number that they might have to try and figure out.
Both those guys have said they're not playing anywhere else. So I think they've pretty much sold out. Like, they'll take a couple bucks less.
I'd hope, but
to add Halsey,
Krejci's made over $70 million in his career. He's 35 years old, and he's only played in one city. I think he'll come cheap. And Tuukka Rask, they know he's going to be out till January, so they probably won't even like sign him to a deal until late in the offseason, or until they know he's healthy, right? But in that case, you got to replace him, which is an issue as well. But they do have young Jeremy Swayman there. But yeah, I think Boston will get a deal done with Halsey, but it is interesting to hear the rumblings.
So here's what this was from Two Guys and a Goalie this past week on Keep It or Clip It.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just clip it. I had a conversation with someone over the weekend that I hated this thought, but said he's coming here. And I'm like, oh my God. So just to be different, I'm going to say clip it. He's going to wind up not in Boston at the start of next season. I'm not saying here, by the way.
Tommy, screw you, buddy. Like this was our chance.
There you go.
So there's Tom Gazolla. Perhaps a reunion. People think that Taylor Hall would look great in Edmonton. I think he would look great in Edmonton. If you could just imagine this, gentlemen. You get Nugent Hopkins done on an extension. Okay, that's great. Still got plenty of cap space. And all of a sudden, Taylor Hall is your other left winger you bring in. Your top six is looking a little bit different going into next season. If whoever this mystery caller that Tom Gazolla had happens to be correct. I don't think it's going to happen personally. I think he's going to stay in Boston. But what do you guys think? The old Taylor Hall reunion tour.
I would love to see it happen. I would love to see it on the ice, and I think it might be even a little bit more. I'd love to see the reaction of people.
It'd be incredible.
But I don't see it happening. But man, would I love to see it happen.
Dan?
I think it'd be really good for Taylor Hall personally, just to be able to come back, exercise his demons, prove the haters wrong, make people love Taylor Hall again in this city. And yeah, but again, with all that said, it's just flat out not happening, because even if he doesn't sign in Boston, there's also 29 other teams in the conversation as well. So it's not like it's a foregone conclusion that if he doesn't sign in Boston, he's coming to Edmonton. But
there's probably like 9 or 10 other teams in the conversation, because I don't think he's going to go anywhere that they don't have a very, very good chance of winning.
He did say that money's not.
Lesson, yeah.
He did say money's not the issue. He's been like, if you talked about Krejci making plenty of money in his day, Taylor Hall has done just fine for himself. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think he ends up in Edmonton. I really don't. I would like to see it. First of all, I'd like to see it. Just the argument, Dan, just think of this. The arguments we could have in Nation HQ if he came back, whenever we're allowed to go back to Nation HQ, because there are some very anti-Hall people at HQ.
There are.
Whereas
what argument would you have? I would just sit there with you, like lean back in your chair, put your feet up on the desk, and just watch these guys walk in. Try not to have like too big of a smile on your face. Don't say a word, but just have a nice little entrance smile for everybody as they walk in, because they know damn well what you're saying.
I think you got to roll in wearing a jersey or something. You got to just like, I think that's what I would do. I think I would just go full heel mode at HQ, and just everybody who get really upset about it would just find me very annoying.
No matter how heated the conversation gets, you just end it with, is Taylor Hall still an Edmonton Oiler? And then walk away.
Again, I don't think he's going to end up back in Edmonton, but it would be fun. Like Rick said, the reaction would be outstanding.
Every offseason, there's one big surprise, right? Where we think one thing is going to happen. We're like, all right, this is a lock. And then it's a total 180, absolute curveball, whatever you want to call it. And something bizarre ends up shaking down.
What's the last one you can remember?
What happened last offseason? I'm trying to jog my brain a little bit.
Tyson Barrie was just kind of out at left field, wasn't it?
Yeah, Tyson Barrie coming to Edmonton was actually like pretty surprising.
The price tag was really surprising.
Yeah, the price tag was surprising for sure. But again, he executed that fucking plan brilliantly. Like, good for him. He did exactly what he needed to do.
Well, and not talking about the Oilers, but for Buffalo, getting Taylor Hall for that number was like, that was confusing too, right? That was a bizarre move by him and the team as well.
I find it funny.
In hindsight, it's actually a really good move for him, because he signed with, hey, if this team on paper had a lot of potential, if it doesn't work out, I'll get flipped at the deadline. $8 million was about where he was gonna. I think that was about right.
I think the funny part about the Buffalo scenario, and sorry if you're a Sabres fan listening to this, but last year they're like, oh, Taylor Hall signed as a free agent. We're going to make some now. A year later, Taylor Hall's gone. Fucking Jack Eichel's going to be gone. Sam Reinhart's going to be gone. Half their team's going to be gone. He's got the first overall pick, though. So,
They all laughed at us.
And he's going back to college.
Yeah, he's like,
Buffalo Sabres fans laughed at us when we were struggling in the decade of darkness. They can enjoy their own reaping their rewards.
Their 2 decades of darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really do anything. It was very nice of them to leave Leon for us. So I'm Bagged Milk. You honestly should start sending them thank you cards too.
Well, I write it every now and then. I thank the Sabres, but I should also thank the Panthers for leaving Leon on the board, because if you redo it, I don't see anybody going ahead of him.
Ekblad's a great defense. Well, he's really good defenseman, but hindsight now, Leon goes first for sure.
Ekblad's injuries and his head injuries is also playing a role in his. Yeah.
Absolutely a bummer, because he's a great player as well. So there's your Taylor Hall news. In case you were looking for it, I know you were. You can say you hate Taylor Hall, but you know you want to argue about it. You know you do.
Go to Oilers Nation HQ the day after the Oilers win the cup off the stick of Taylor Hall.
Yeah, if Taylor Hall does sign in Edmonton again, just leave a sign outside HQ in the grass, like one of those campaign style signs that just say, "I told you so." And we'll just have those all around the yard, and it'll be very entertaining. All right. We are bringing back a segment. If you listened to North by NorthGretz 100 years ago in Oilers Nation, you know the segment Ask the Idiots. Basically, we would have people send in questions for myself or Chris, the former intern, now the tire guy, and Gene Shores. We would just answer your stuff. And we're going to bring that back because why not? Because why not? Tyler said it earlier. We put out the giant question on social media. Waz put it up on TikTok as well. We've got some questions here, boys. So let's run through them. In the first segment on Oilers Nation Radio of Ask the Idiots, we should have a button for this, Tyler. I've decided just now.
Yeah.
Some kind of button. We can make that happen, but not today. First off, boys, this is from Huntsy91. Huntsy91 wants to know, do you think the future Oilers will have McDavid and Draisaitl together or running their own lines? I'm going to jump in. It's got to be their own lines. Those two, I love watching them together, and there's going to be ways that you do it, after PKs, maybe mix them in with a shift here or there. But I think ideally the team would be better off with both of those guys anchoring their own lines. However, you need the wingers to do it. You need the wingers to make it happen. Tyler, you're up. McDavid and Draisaitl on their own line or no?
It's got to be separate. Want to create two absolutely deadly scoring lines. If they pull off this offseason right, the Oilers can walk into next season with the best top six in the NHL. Keep them separate.
Rick?
Yeah, I'm on team separate. I liked ways of sprinkling them together throughout the game to keep the other team off, keep them on their heels, kind of attack when they're not ready for it. But I think at the opening face-off and in the game sheet there, I think it's best they're on different lines.
Daniel?
You guys could not be any more wrong if you try. I'm just that's the only answer. That's the goal. I mean, that's been the goal as an organization since both of them really came about. It's been the winger conversation, and we have to figure it out this offseason. This is Ken Holland's summer to figure it all out.
We're going to see them together at times. Power play coming after a PK. There's going to be times when they're together, but
down
it's
in
best.
a pivotal situation. Yeah.
It's for the best if they're on their own lines.
Just sprinkle it in at any time, like throughout the game and throughout the season. Because I think when the team understands that you can do that at any given time, and not necessarily just at the end of a PK or on the power play, it's just like this weird time. You're just like, okay, you two go. The other team, they're getting they're just like pumping anybody out. Oh shit, they're both. Oh, how do you react to that? So, yeah, I mean, they could play together, but you'd have to have a really good additions to your team. And I think it's just not really likely that happens.
Jaywood1 asks, what are your thoughts on the Oilers pursuing Krejci in free agency to play the second line center? I think we just kind of covered that, really.
No, not happening.
No,
sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't read ahead, I promise.
Lil Ben 50. Lil Ben 50. This is an interesting one. Most underrated player on the Edmonton Oilers. Most underrated player on the Oilers. Who's everybody got? Underrated.
I think this year a lot of the fan base has soured on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I don't think they really understand how valuable he can be. And I know he had a down year, and I just think there's a lot of people right now with the whole grass is always greener thing, thinking that some free agent worth $3.5 million is like magically as good as Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So that's a bit of a weird one for me. I think he's gotten a little bit underrated by some portions of this fan base. And I'm actually gonna throw Ethan Bear into that conversation as well.
How dare you pick two?
Wow, sorry guys, but
before we even get one.
I know, whatever. There's no rules on Ask the Idiots. I think a lot of people look at Ethan Bear and are like, they're like, oh, he's a third pairing defenseman. That's all he'll ever be, blah, blah. And it's like, well, no, he's actually like a really, really good puck mover, solid positionally in his own end. Yes, he has brain farts once in a while. Every defenseman does, but he's 23 years old. Like, take some breath. So I know I took two answers, but those are the two, I think.
Rick, most underrated Oiler?
I think you saw it again this year in a really solid year. And I think a lot of the down talk about him was injury related, that I think it's been, fingers crossed, fixed up. But Adam Larsson, I think he's the type of player that you really, really need. He's really important type in the regular season, and he's a guy that would be really valuable in the playoffs. Just that steady, stay-at-home type of player. I know people like to shit on him about his puck-moving abilities. I don't think it's as bad as what they say it is. But yeah, same thing. He has got some warts to his game right there, but I think his upside is a lot more up than down. So I'll give it with Larsson.
Dan, most underrated Oiler?
I don't know. I just dropped out of the meeting, but I'm back.
I see you. You're not moving though.
No, you're frozen. You're frozen in time. Everybody else is moving.
Good answer, Dan.
Dan doesn't get an answer. My pick for most underrated Oiler. Tyler already picked Nugent Hopkins. That was going to be my one. You know what? Jujhar Khaira. Jujhar Khaira, when he is playing at his best and playing the way he can, really can anchor the middle spot in the bottom six. He's a big guy. He can move. He can kill penalties. I think that when he's playing at his best, he is a damn good hockey player. And it bums me out that he's so streaky, but c'est la vie sometimes. And I just needed to pick an answer off the top of my head. So I'm going to go with Jujhar because why not? Dan, you're back. I see you.
Tyler, why are you kicking me out of the meeting?
Well,
Fair enough. My underrated player, I think, is going to kind of go along the same lines as what Rick was saying about Nugent, where it's just a guy that, yeah, he had a down year last year, but what he was doing away from the puck and every shift, it seemed like it was never a problem with him, is Kailer Yamamoto. I think the things that he does every night, he doesn't have a lot of off nights. Even if he isn't on the score sheet, he's still grinding it out in the corner, playing way above his weight class when it comes to his physicality. I love to have him on this team. I think he's a solid winger that we don't have to really worry about the right wing for that reason. And so, yeah, for me, Kailer Yamamoto is my most underrated player.
We got a bunch more questions. I'm just going to do one more. We're going to save some for next week's Ask the Idiots. So I won't get to everybody today, but we're going to do one more. This one's from Roddy Elsabag. I'm definitely not saying that right. So Roddy, his question is, do you see a potential trade involving Ethan Bear or Caleb Jones to potentially fill our third line center position? That kind of goes into what Tyler was saying earlier about expansion, where you got a spot with some strength for the Oilers. That would be, left-hand D, especially prospects. Maybe you move somebody to get something done. What do you guys think about that idea? Caleb Jones or Ethan Bear?
If you're moving one of those, promising young defensemen, you're getting more than a third line center, and it better be in a package for like a really good top six winger. Like if I'm including Jones, especially if I'm including Ethan Bear in a deal, I'm getting back Ricard Raquel, Sam Reinhart, one of those guys. I can't go a podcast without mentioning Ricard Raquel. That's just the way I operate.
Tyler's like his go-to.
If they get Ricard Raquel, man, I'm going to have to buy a jersey. Like, there's no way around that.
It's in that closet already. He's just going to pull it out one day.
Yeah. He just needs to add a number to it.
If they acquire Ricard Raquel and it doesn't work out, I might have to find a job in a new market. I'm going to go work for Jets Nation and just move there. But that's the only way I'm moving one of those two young guys, is if you're getting a legitimate impact piece. You can find a good third line center on the free agent market. It's harder to find legitimate top six wingers.
Yeah, I'm with Tyler. So my answer would be, if you're trading one of those guys, I would prefer it to be a part of a package for something bigger. Dan or Rick?
Well,
yeah, same thing here. It's, if any one of those guys are going, it's not for that center back. I think before Bear goes, they have Dougie's name on a contract, but Jones could go somewhere, But if it's not to Seattle, I don't think you're making a trade for him with him either. So I see them both being here.
Yeah. All right. So Dan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, the part that we're not mentioning enough here, I think, is that our defense needs to continue to get better, not be removed from. So if you're moving one of those guys, you have to have brought in a piece that makes that defense better and makes that player expendable, in my mind. That's the only answer you can have there.
I agree with you. So again, we've got some more questions that came in for round 1 of Ask the Idiots. We'll get back to it next week. Keep sending them in. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, send them to Waz. Or, Tyler, you said we had another comment. This was actually supposed to be for real life, but it came through for ON Radio instead.
Yeah. So actually, I'm just going to give like the whole plug here of how people can do this if they want to. We set up an inbox for the Real Life podcast. And the idea is that you can go on there, speakpipe.com/reallifepod, and you can record an audio message for us to hear and respond to on the podcast. It's really cool. Super easy. If you go to the Real Life Podcast, Instagram and Twitter, the link's in the bio. I'm going to listen to them all. So if you drop one in there and just say, hey, this is for the Oilers Nation Radio guys, we'll gladly play it on the podcast and break down whatever your take is or answer whatever your question is. So Electronic Jordan dropped in the first question in the inbox and said it was for Oilers Nation Radio. So here it is.
We're stealing all the thunder from
I know
the
you
guys
set this
on
up for Nation
show.
Real Life, but Oilers Nation Radio can play them too. My question is obviously hypothetical, but how short is the list of players you would trade 1-for-1, salary aside, for Leon Draisaitl? Right now, straight up, 1-for-1, no retained salary. Hell, salary cap's irrelevant. I guess it probably doesn't matter. How short is the list of players you would trade 1-for-1? Kucherov? Wouldn't do Carey Price, I don't think. Wouldn't do Marc-Andre Fleury. Way too old, both of them. McKinnon? I don't know. I'm struggling. Vasilevsky, maybe. I would have said Carter Hart last offseason, but that didn't turn out great. I don't know. How short is your list?
First off, I appreciate Electronic Jordan pondering his own question.
I was just going to say,
I like that too. He was answering his own question. That's the way to do it.
Get you on the show. He's a part of the show now.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rick.
I without putting that much thought into it, I think it's one. I think the only name.
Sorry, I'm getting a call from Belgium right now.
That's
Belgium's really wants to get in. Yeah, Belgium wants in on Ask the Idiots.
The only guy I think it is Nate. And even still, I think it's pretty much a across the board trade. I don't think we're getting anything. We're going to lose a bit. We're going to win a bit. I think it's going to even out the end. And honestly, there's not a goaltender. I don't think I'm doing it for a defenseman. And in the terms of I think it's only Nate.
If anybody else got an answer, because I was going to say either McKinnon. I would do it for McKinnon probably.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a fucking hockey player. But off the top of my head, like I'm looking at the guys in Toronto. I love how Matthews scores goals, but I wouldn't do it.
If it's cap aside, I might do it.
For Matthews?
Matthews is fucking good, and he's a little younger.
He's really good.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you do it for Marner instead?
Because Marner's not as good as Austin Matthews.
No, better than Matthews.
It's like if you're thinking it through, right? Like, and you put Austin beside Connor, all of a sudden they're filling the net.
But I'm not paying him. I'm not paying him 3.1 million more. If we're including the contracts, if this is cap world and you're just trying to trade him 1-for-1, he's only got 2 more years left. I might do it for Pasternak. 2 years where you get David Pasternak as good as he is at almost $2 million less than Leon Draisaitl. Pasternak's filthy, man. He's so good.
No, I agree. He's
a winger though, so I'm hesitant, but
without contracts, he definitely popped in my head for the, if we weren't considering if it's just straight up, whatever. I guess in a situation, there might be 2 or 3 other names there, but
to answer the question though, I think the list is minuscule.
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 players.
I'm trying to think about it.
Maybe.
I'm trying to think of
there's not a defenseman you do it for. No.
I'm trying to think.
I might be considering doing Cale Makar just because of his age, just because you're going to have that player for that long.
I might do Makar. Actually, that's a great answer, Dan.
Thanks.
You can build a defense. You can build a defense without him. Look at Montreal.
What about Vasilevsky?
You can build a forward core without Draisaitl too.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's easier with them there, obviously.
And you have the best forward in the world in McDavid. Can you imagine if you get the guy who, I mean, he's already a Norris candidate, but he's probably going to be the best defenseman in the world in the next 12 months? Like, that's
Vasilevsky's only 26 years old.
Goalies are voodoo, though, man. Yeah. That scares the shit out of me. I wouldn't do goalie.
No goalie.
I like Makar.
That's a tough question, Electronic Jordan.
If Makar was like Hedman size, maybe I'd be a little more prone to. But I just don't see
I hear what you're saying, but I hear what you're saying, but like you can't look at those two players like talent wise and say it's not close.
It's close, yeah.
Right? That's where the comparison is. I agree with you, Rick. There's more things you would love to see from a Cale Makar in that kind of a transaction. If he had Chris Ponger's size, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah. But the advantage of Cale Makar would be his age. And that's the main thing that would put it over the edge for me. Very close.
Yeah, that's fair. That edge wouldn't close it enough for me. I don't think.
It's a tough question. If you're listening to this right now and have an answer for Electronic Jordan's question, hit us up. This is
a fantastic issue to fucking have. Yeah. Leon's not even our best fucking player.
Yeah.
No, what an off-season topic. We're struggling with how we would hypothetically trade the second best player on our team.
The reigning Hart winner.
And by the way,
the list is 3 down.
I was just going to say it's 2 players off of one team and 1 player off of another.
It's an interesting question.
Strong maybes.
Yeah, exactly. None of those are like guarantees either. Other than I would say McKinnon is a no-brainer for me.
I would love to hear what people have to say about it, because there's I just look, and Draisaitl's getting better too. You know what I mean? So it's just it's a small list. It's a very, very small list. I would love to hear your guys' answers. ON Radio Podcast, hit us up. But first, it's time to get to our hot and cold performers of the week. Deuce Vodka. It's a Friday afternoon. Tyler, you still haven't tried a Caesar yet, have you?
No, I haven't. That'll be for Tyler tries.
We need to get a Caesar in. I think I can turn you into a Caesar guy.
Okay.
Pretty easily.
Like a really nice Caesar.
I've always wanted. Not really, no.
That's okay. You don't have to have a spicy Caesar.
No, that's fair, but like a smoky barbecue flavor.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be nice.
Yeah, we can work on something there.
I'll do it at the pint.
Yeah, you get to the pint.
Little barbecue. Buddy.
They make great Caesars at the pint, and you get a nice little snack.
When we opened at first, we had like 4 or 5 different Caesars with, we had a Jack Daniels one, a tequila one. I can put together something for you, buddy.
And then you add in that Deuce Vodka, Rick, and it's just going to make it perfect.
Oh, so smooth. It might fall out right through the glass.
So smooth, you too might be singing the anthem, DeuceVodka.com/find us. You can find a store locator there and get yourself a bottle for the weekend, provided that you were of legal drinking age. Gentlemen, hot and cold performance time. Tyler, get your buttons ready. We're starting with our veggies. And first up on my screen is Nation Dan, your Deuce Vodka cold performer of the week, sir.
Well, I'll just throw it out there right away for my Deuce cold performer of the week. The only insider I trust is Frank Saravelli. After that, the list is dead. And one that I specifically don't trust is Trina's Oil. And that account continues to put out.
I've kind of forgotten it's around, actually.
And pick up rumors, and the reason I'm mentioning them is because they just became active again. Garfield has been pumping out them rumors. Tyson Barrie's coming back. Darnell Nurse is going to sign an extension. Adam Larson has an extension in waiting. Philip Larson's coming back, as I put out last week. It's absolutely bonkers. I'm sick and tired of these reporters and these people that have inside information that they just throw at the wall and then they delete the tweet afterwards if it doesn't turn out to be true. So Trina's Oil and all you insiders, you're my Deuce Vodka cold performer of the week.
What the hell is going on?
Can I just quickly say though, you're talking about you're calling that account an insider. That would be like if I was comparing and like her and that account, whatever it is, and Frank Saravalli is like holding up a beautiful sports car and like a rusty old wagon. Like,
hey, just because Frank's profile picture isn't attractive to you doesn't mean he's a rusty old wagon. Okay.
How dare you?
Also, Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnson. There's like
no, they're dead to me. No, it's just Frank Saravelli because he's not attached to anybody except for dailyfaceoff.com.
Yes.
The DFO rundown Monday and Fridays. Who's on today, Tyler?
I'm gonna save that because it's my hot performer.
All right, Rick, you're next up. Your Deuce Vodka cold performer of the week.
Well, I don't know if I can blame. Well, I guess there are a couple people I can blame for this, but it's the fact there's no Oilers hockey on right now. Mm-hmm. Everything looks so much fun out there. I'm still watching. The arenas look fantastic. Well, 3 of the 4 anyways. The other one's getting there. But it's just no Oilers hockey. I'm jealous. That's all. It's simple. It's petty, but I'm just jealous. So I want my Oilers back. And whoever's running the Instagram account for Oilers Nation, I put a message on there yesterday. I'm really hoping I don't see a post tomorrow.
I'm upset. I'll make sure Waz is on it. Waz is
you know what post?
You know what post is going up.
You know what post it is.
Tomorrow? As far as I'm concerned, that
thank you. Exactly.
Unless I'd feel a little frisky tomorrow when I post it because I feel a little silly. All right. Tyler, you're up next. Deuce Vodka cold performer of the week.
I am going to talk about another sport here. My beloved Toronto Blue Jays are currently shitting the bed and potentially pissing away their season. I am very upset. Their bullpen sucks. They have one of the most exciting young hitters in the majors who is doing historic shit, and they still cannot find a way to get wins. It's just all around a bad time to be a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I'm very upset about this. And the Blue Jays bullpen specifically, you get my cold performer.
Why are you the way that you are? I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
How long is the season this year, Tyler?
162.
It is the 162. Yeah. Okay, so they're not.
Fuck, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Just for the record, Tyler, this is not the worst time to be a Blue Jays fan. I'd like to take you back about another decade or so. That was really bad. But yes, just that pitching, just that little bit of pitching there. That's all it's going to be up and over the ladder. You're that close.
They lead the majors in heartbreaking losses. Like it's just 1-run loss after 1-run loss after 1-run loss.
New statistic being tracked this year.
3 games in a row against the Yankees. 3 times they're leading in the 7th. 3 times they lost. That's tough.
I know.
It's tough in these streets, man. It's tough in these streets for hardcore Jays fans like myself. Right, Tyler?
Yep.
My Deuce Vodka cold performer of the week is Jeff Petry's bloodshot eyes.
Oh, yeah.
That shit haunted my dreams that night. And I know he didn't go too far into what happened. I know he said his wife warned his kids about his bloodshot eyes. That shit is creepy, man. I know what happens. I remember a guy I went to high school with. His name was Trevor. And he puked so violently at a bush party that he shot all the blood... popped all the blood vessels in one of his eyes, and he had a blood red eye like that for a while. It is weird. So Jeff Petry, your creepy eyes, I know you're going to be fine, but your creepy eyes are haunting me, and they are my cold performer of the week.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Like all of the pictures that came out of him, man, after game 2, and he's just like staring at stuff. I'm like, good Lord. Good Lord. All right. Now we end off with some positive news, the bright sides from our past week. It is time for the hot performers of the week. Since Tyler won't tell me who's on the DFO rundown, I'll just start with them today. Deuce Vodka, hot performer of the week, sir.
Today we had the new head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets on, Brad Larson. And it's a name you probably don't know, but this is a former player who played like almost 600 games between the NHL and the American League, has grinded it out for a decade in the Blue Jackets organization, assistant coach in the AHL, head coach in the AHL, assistant coach in the NHL for the last 7. He's finally getting his look. And let me just say this, the answers he gave, like he was just so authentic. Like he would sit there, take the question in, think about it, and then go off for like 4.5 minutes on the subject. We asked him about Patrick Laine. He was blunt about what happened with Laine and Torch. We asked him about Seth Jones. He doesn't dodge the question. We asked him to say something about Todd McClellan, who coached him in junior. He says Todd McClellan's got a massive head. We asked him who would
It's true. I sat right behind him during the playoffs. Yeah. Huge head.
We asked him who's in better shape, himself or his friend Jared Bednar. He said Avalanche coach Jared Bednar just focuses on weights and bulking and cutting and doesn't have any sort of cardio. He was hilarious. He was insightful. It was a lot of fun. The interview today, DFO rundown with new Blue Jackets head coach Brad Larson, gets my hot performer of the week.
Put some respect on my name.
Rick, you're up next. Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week.
After that story there, I think I should give it to Mr. Bednar because I absolutely hate cardio, and you go to the gym for the weights. I dig that. Okay, but this goes back to last Saturday afternoon. Goes out to the medical crew at the Euro.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I think everybody knows this by now. Christian Eriksen had some sort of terrifying medical experience where I know there's rumor they did CPR, chest compressions or whatever. I don't know exactly what I never saw it. There was this side of the other thing. That doesn't really matter. But whoever took care of him did or didn't keep him alive or whatever the heck happened there, all those people there, they deserve this and a lot more because that was a terrifying incident that could have been a hell of a lot worse. So we'll give the shout out to the medical crew at the Euro.
Tyler.
Button. Fuck me.
I hope that we can have a clip of you scrambling there, just like hands go up in the middle of the air.
I want that as a button too, like the quiet. Oh fuck me.
Yes.
The thing that too about the Eric situation is with medical professionals, the fact that they do it like under such pressure of a building full of people watching, and it's life or death in the moment. Those people are incredible.
And you're 100% right. And it's one thing for everybody, I think, listening to this. A lot of people listen to this. They play rec hockey, you play soccer, all that kind of thing. Make sure you know where the defibrillators are, because that's a super important thing that could save a life. And in this situation, it did. So yeah, it was a great call by you, Rick. That's a good Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week.
Mr. Nation Dan, you're next up though with the Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week. What got you?
Well, that was going to be mine, and it was actually going to go to the defibrillator as well. But I'll give it to a boy that we've mentioned a few times on this podcast. One of our boys, our new guys to the nation, Waz. For all the content that he's been putting out there, he's putting his face onto a TikTok stream talking about the Oilers getting swept now for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Everybody else has kind of moved on from it. Waz has to keep making content for it because we tell him he has to. So Waz, you're my Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week for slugging it out in these summer months, and you've only got another 4 or 5 to go, buddy.
It was funny. I was talking to Waz. He's just like, so how do you guys keep pumping out content during the summer? I was just like, you got to get creative, man.
Yup.
Content don't stop around here. And you know what? Neither do the page views. So we need more content. He's like, so can I get weird? I'm like, buddy, get weird. It's fucking off season.
Tequila helps. Vodka helps. A little nation beer helps. You know, what you got to do, what you got to do.
Yeah. Wrap things up. Deuce Vodka, hot performer of the week. I'm just going to give it to citizens of the nation. We launched a flowery Oilers Nation hat recently, like not long ago. And it is a sharp looking lid, and we sold out of it like that. You guys are the best, always supporting us with new gear drops, content on the site, with podcasts like this one. Also, one of my favorite parts about all of you guys, the listeners, is on our Tuesday meeting when Tyler runs through how the podcast have been doing, and I get to hear him talk about how well Oilers Nation Radio is performing versus the other podcast I'm on, which is the Nation Real Life podcast. So all of you listeners, you're listening, you're downloading, you're subscribing, you're telling cousins, you're telling coworkers. And
are we beating them?
Oh,
yeah. All right, fair enough.
Oilers Nation Radio gets essentially, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, we get the same number of downloads in a week doing one episode as Real Life gets with 2.
Yeah. And also shout out to everyone who is battled through the audio as we go through our pandemic year as well. I know sometimes there is crunching and internet shitting out and all of that, but we try to keep the content good. And we got the new studio being built down in the River Valley there. So one day we'll be back to A+ audio. But to the people who keep leaving reviews and saying that this podcast needs a better producer, I will fight you on that. And I will say it's not my fault.
So just to wrap it up, my Dudes Vodka Hot Performer of the Week is Citizens of the Nation for selling us out of that summery hat. It sold out so fast, I didn't even get a chance to get one.
I know, me too. I'm pissed.
And then secondly, just for making this podcast grow even in off-season months, I'm very, very grateful to all of you for listening. It's a good time for us to do it. And I'm thankful that you guys listen to it. So all of you, Hot Performer of the Week.
Woo! Friday, baby. Yeah, let's celebrate Friday. Woo!
It's true. It is Friday, and I will celebrate. Lastly, just to finish up the housekeeping items on my list, Dave Tippett finished 13th in voting for the Jack Adams. I was not surprised by that at all. I know some people thought he may get a little bit higher than that. I wasn't surprised. Nods or say yes or nay. Was anybody surprised by Dave Tippett finishing 13th in Jack Adams?
No.
I'm pleasantly surprised he got some votes.
There you go, Dan.
Oh, a little bit. I think like 6, 7, 8. Like I'm not getting too worried about it, but I mean, the way the team performed throughout the regular season, 13 does seem to be kind of high, but I'm not losing any sleep about it.
To you guys, when I say the Jack Adams Award and I say the GM of the Year Award, which one do you think is more the most improved team award?
Jack Adams. The GM award is like who's gone the furthest in the playoffs. That's like every year. It's like two guys that are in the Final Four and one guy who had a good regular season and lost out early. And the Jack Adams Award, because they vote on it earlier, is typically like, oh, most improved, or like, hey, here's a coach who was a great story, like Rod Brindamore this year. Oh, what a great story. He's got the Jack Adams. But like a lot of these guys writing can't, and like I can't either, so maybe I shouldn't talk. But like not a lot of guys voting for this award are like breaking down systems when they're doing it.
And the GM award, I can't get behind it because Peter Chiarelli was nominated for that award. And all he did was literally show up and draft McDavid. So screw that award. Thank you.
I'm thinking that the NHL did some funny business there because usually the GM that wins the Stanley Cup the year before is nominated. But I think that the NHL didn't want that attention because that GM is now circumventing a cap and all that good stuff.
The professional writers would have a something to say if the NHL stepped in and was like, you're not allowed to vote for this guy. Also, can I say, while we're on the topic of like reasons I love this podcast, we're getting close to the hour 20-minute mark, which is fine with me. But we can take the smallest thing and turn it into like 7 minutes of content. You were like, quickly, guys, yes or no? Dave Tippett, Jack Adams, and now here we are, like still talking. We can sit here and be like, so the Oilers are changing the shade of color on the blue lines on the ice, and it'd be like, all right, well, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be easier to review things, and we'd go off about it.
Well, then, Tyler, you're going to love this because the last thing I had on my list was the 15th anniversary of the Fernando Pisani OT goal in OT. We can't talk about it next week because it happened this past week. I just want to real fast. Where were you? I was at Beer Hunter in St. Albert, RIP, now closed. And when the goal was scored, a pitcher of beer got launched in the air, sprayed everybody. I hugged a room full of strangers. It was a great time for 21-year-old Bag Milk. Rick, where were you at?
I was at my place of work at the time is the Moose Factory, and I was sitting there standing at the bar because I can't sit in the type of situation like that. And we went to overtime, and I was terrified. We went down by one player. I was even more terrified. I'm not so sure my heart was beating anymore. I think I was crouched behind 2 chairs as it was going. And then I think that play took about an hour and a half to by the time he touched it at the blue line before he scored. And it went from absolute terror to absolute joy in a flick of a second, and it was absolutely fantastic. I've been chasing that high ever since.
Dan?
The Connor lottery was damn close.
Pretty good. Dan?
Well, I had just actually started a job working as a bouncer, and I was in the process of breaking up my first ever fight, where I got punched by an actual sitting MLA in the fight. So I didn't actually see the goal until after the fight was over. It's a weird story to tell, but yeah. Got punched in the stomach by a sitting MLA. I was shocked that somebody had decided to punch me, and then broke that up. And then I was like, oh yeah, the Oilers scored. Sweet.
Lastly, Tyler, you were imagine eating alphagetti or something. You were very young.
Yeah, very young. I was probably already in bed. So there you go.
All right,
talking to your dad.
There we go. Happy 15th anniversary, Fernando. You took over the city that spring, and I'll never forget. I see
him around St. Albert like once a month. The other day I just pulled up to a light And he was, when I was going through the intersection, he was on the other side waiting to turn left. And I was like, oh, that was Fernando Pisani in his car. I saw him at the grocery store once too. He's always around.
So as a producer of this podcast, you need to rip in front of him and slam on the brakes, refusing to let him move until he agrees to be a guest.
Holding up traffic.
Thank you.
I would say thank you to him every time I see him in public.
Maybe just get a sign for your car, Tyler. Just like hold it up if you see him in your car. You know, thank you.
Fernando, text me.
Just hold your phone up and play the ABBA song.
Yes.
Just like the old boom box right above your head. Just stand next to him.
My heart.
My heart too. It's just, there was something in the air that night. All right. From Sherwood Ford, skip the dishes.
That's the last time I felt something.
Jesus. From Sherwood Ford, skip the dishes, Cornerstone Insurance, and Deuce Vodka. I want to say thank you for listening to Oilers Nation Radio, episode 144. For the boys for giving me an hour and 20 some odd minutes of their time. And for Tyler, for not cutting us off. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you guys next Friday. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Shout out Brad Larson.
Best wishes.
Thanks for listening to Oilers Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media to stay up to date and never miss a podcast.